Scott, we've been hearing about grand juries. I think people are anxiously anticipating indictments. Welcome back to the show. You've got a lot for us today. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Jason?
I'm very well. It's good to see you again. And, you've been going absolutely crazy on X with all kinds of new information about how Michael Flynn was really kind of at the epicenter of the entire Russiagate, Trump-Russia hoax investigation. He's kind of the linchpin in many ways. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the way I see him, just kind of in a nutshell, is he is very much connected to all the bad guys on the left, and yet he's kind of like the insurgent, their guy on the inside that was creating the red meat for the bad guys on the left and the media to go after Trump.
Right. I mean, of course, because he was on trial. I mean, for really years during the first Trump administration, everybody sort of saw him as the canary in the coal mine. They're even referring to him as patient zero and stuff like that. People can get in-depth articles and watch all of our sponsor exclusive shows when they go to biggertruthmedia.com, read everything that you've been writing. You've got some new information that you've just put out only 2 hours ago. What are we going to be discussing today when we go to the sponsor exclusive segment in just about 30 minutes?
Yeah, we're going to go into what I published on today is the one document that I really think needs to be declassified to give us a bigger picture of what really happened in Russiagate. There's so much talk about declassifying documents and these newly declassified documents being bombshells and proving treason and a conspiracy and all this. I'm not sure that there's any crime that's actually prosecutable, that, as we talked about last time, that from any of the documents that have been declassified. And I'm not suggesting that this would indicate a crime necessarily, but what it would do is give us a bigger picture of Flynn's involvement specifically. And this is a letter that the DIA wrote to Representatives Cummings and Chaffetz in April of 2017 that in response to their questions on the House Oversight Committee at the time. And while the letter has been declassified, long ago, several years ago, it is with major redactions. Excuse me. And so those redactions really, the whole meat of the letter is redacted. And at the end of it, there's a list of enclosures, which are documents that were attached to the letter, and all of those are still classified. In fact, we don't even know what the titles of at least 3 of those enclosures are, because they're redacted. And so this document right here, this, to me, this is the biggest aspect of Russiagate that has been completely ignored by the media on the right and the left.
Unbelievable. I mean, they say, oh, we've declassified this, we've declassified that, but then we get these documents with all these white boxes all over them. We really have no idea what is in there, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's where all the meat is. It's almost a hoax to say it's declassified.
Right. I mean, we do have an idea because they are the entire responses to questions about Flynn's foreign contacts and who they were and in what countries and all of that. And we know for a fact that a lot of it is Russia, because going back to 2013, he went to the GRU, which is like Russia's CIA, and he met directly. He was the first high-level intelligence community person to go to Moscow and actually go inside the GRU. He met with the head of the GRU and several other people, including Russian Ambassador Kislyak, who was the person that he created a whole lot of trouble for Trump with in November, December of 2016.
Wow. And something that I have observed, Scott, just with all of these, I mean, look, before I started Crowdsource the Truth, I was never involved with this kind of intrigue and espionage and everything. For all we know, there could be factions within the Russian GRU who, let's say, don't like Putin and say, oh, sure, we'll team up with Flynn to frame Trump as a Russian asset or whatever it is they were trying to do. And then it becomes this like multi-layered onion of what is going on here with, they say, oh, we've heard even now with the New York Times saying that these latest revelations from Tulsi Gabbard are themselves Russian disinformation. So there still are tricks waiting to be sprung, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, this last weekend was this huge brouhaha over these these documents that were supposedly found in a burn bag in some secret room at the DOJ, and and it was an annex to the Durham report from the Durham investigation. And I don't, did you read that document, Jason?
I scanned it. What I've been
Yeah.
doing with these documents is basically kind of OCRing. They always give it to
Hmm.
us not searchable. So I do a little
Right.
OCR and then search for relevant names and
Sure.
things that are people
Absolutely.
I'm most interested in. What
Yep.
piqued your
And this
interest
is
in
the
this
document.
document?
Well, so the at its core, and this is what the media on the right is completely ignoring some absolutely crucial facts that the document makes clear. And that is that the source of all of this is an unnamed intelligence source from a foreign country. The consensus is that that is a Dutch intelligence source that actually hacked into the Russian hackers. And all of the documents that are being shared come from Russia, come from Russian intelligence. And that's something that is completely ignored by and unreported by
Right.
anyone on the right as they're reporting all of this stuff, just
As
breathless
fact.
about these
Yeah.
emails as if they're fact. The document itself says, and it goes into quite a bit of detail explaining why they believe that they were fabricated by the Russians, that these emails from an employee of the Open Society Sources, Open Society Foundation, these emails were attributed to him, but that most likely because there was no email. They actually, the FBI did they subpoenaed emails. They tried to find these actual emails to see if they were real. They did not find any emails like this, but what they did find is emails from other, like the Podesta emails that were turned
Right.
over to WikiLeaks. There were other emails written by other people in the FBI DOJ orbit that were much less meaningful, but had the same text, pieces of the same text. And so they
Right.
kind of played, cut and paste, cutting pieces of text from this email and from that email so that it was real sounding language because the Russians, English is their second language. And they created an email that sounded like it was legit. And that's what they used as the basis for these memos that they wrote. And these were supposedly internal Russian intelligence memos about what they were either, who knows if this is what they actually thought or if they actually knew that they were creating disinformation when they did this. And this is like what they wanted to spread here was, some sort of Russian disinformation. So all of the claims on the right about these mysterious, including that there were, that there was something nefarious about them being in a burn bag, or even that there's some Harry Potter like secret magic room at the DOJ that these were sitting in. None of it is credible. It's all just ridiculous.
Cash Patel's
And
Hogwarts
yes,
over there.
exactly.
But hang on a second. Let's go over this again because you've just laid it out very well, but it's still extremely confusing. I agree with your assessment, but I just want to go through it again. So what you're telling us is this declassified annex to the Durham report. This is
Mhm.
additional information that hadn't been released before, and Chuck Grassley just put this out. So this is what was found. So what's the sequence there? Cash Patel says, hey, we found this unburnt stuff in a burn bag, gives that to Grassley. Grassley releases it. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, yeah. And here's what's ridiculous about that. This was a digital document. This is something that was created on a computer. This is not like it was like written in triplicate and this is the
Right,
last
burn it.
surviving copy.
Right,
I mean, this is on a computer, on a hard drive, somewhere at the DOJ. But they claim that they only were able to find this paper copy that was in a burn bag. There's nothing nefarious about putting printed documents that they know are stored digitally and copied
right.
digitally into burn bags. Every department in the federal government does this very frequently.
Shred
There's nothing
things
nefarious
so they
about
don't
that
have
at
loose
all.
copies flying
Right.
around.
Right. But they put this out there like this is something that they were trying to destroy and hide in a secret room. It's just it's ridiculous. Um,
Well, that's so okay. So let's carry on because they've given us this mysterious kind of pay a lot of attention to this,
sure.
and they're saying that Open Society Foundation has done what? They created these emails, or
They're saying that there were two people. It was Bernardo and uh I'm blanking on their names. It's been about a week since I read it, or it's been a few days. So
Leonard
Leonard Bernardo,
Bernardo, yeah,
and then there was and he's
Julia,
the
somebody,
yeah. So and that's Julianne Smith, who actually worked with Mike Morrell, who we'll talk about a little later. Um, but uh, the and she's credited in part with this whole plot by Hillary Clinton campaign to make to frame Trump as a Russian asset. And that's
right?
kind of what this whole thing is about. And the reality is that it's very credible that Hillary Clinton's team was involved and in communication with the FBI and the DOJ about this promoting this narrative that Trump is a Russian asset. And it's crooked. It's crooked that this happened. It's and I don't want to downplay that at all. This is definitely crooked. Is it a crime? I don't know. I mean, it's you got a candidate conspiring with the FBI and the Department of Justice to spread disinformation about another candidate. That's pretty crooked. I mean, that's really bad. But is what is the crime? And that's something that we'll see as because what's been presented is not evidence sufficient to bring about indictments. And
But
but
there's
there are whistleblowers coming out and so there's a lot of information that we don't have yet.
right, and there's something more kind of underlying this, and it goes to the whole. This is a composite of emails, and we've got the Open Society Foundation involved. There was a breach of security with emails stemming from Hillary Clinton's unsecured email server that she had at her house. Now,
Mm.
it strikes me that if the United States Secretary of State is doing all of her email communication literally from a Mac OS X server that some peewee IT guy who doesn't even know what bit level erasure is to the extent that he's going onto Reddit or 4chan and saying, hey, does anybody know how to bit level erase stuff to find this bleach bit software? What's that guy's name? Brian
Yeah.
Pagliano. She's
Yeah.
got this really unprofessional guy handling the server. It seems to me that that sort of information would get around in the world of espionage pretty quickly, and that
Mhm.
server would be attacked almost instantly. In fact, it almost suggests that Hillary Clinton wanted no security on the server so that she would have plausible deniability for passing classified information to people, and now this information is out. And so all of this stuff about, oh, the Russians made composite emails from real emails, and there was a DNC hack, and there was a John Podesta hack, and WikiLeaks has it, and the Russians hacked it, or whatever. It seems like a big kind of smear job to make it very difficult for lay people and, frankly, any real investigators alike to actually understand what is going on. Don't you agree?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's what these people, these you know, kind of scumbag high level politicians, intelligence operatives, that's what they do is they build in plausible deniability into
Right.
everything that they do by creating conflicting stories, saying one thing, saying the opposite. And that's just what they do. And we see this from, Flynn and Roger Stone and all these people on the right, as well as, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, all these people. That's what they do. And so it makes it very difficult to prosecute them. But and it's not, this isn't a new thing. I mean, this is you look at like even Capone, he ended up being convicted of tax evasion instead of being a gangster and all the crimes that he was allegedly involved with as a gangster. And because they couldn't actually produce enough evidence to convict him, but they could convict him on tax evasion.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the origin of FICO and all, or not of
Rico.
RICO
Yeah.
and all of that to try to make that easier to prosecute something like that. But it's so hard. And that's the way that's what makes our judicial system great. And we talked about this last time too, is that it's designed to give deference to the accused. And I think that we all really want to live in a country with a
Right.
judicial system that's going to presume innocence until proven guilty.
Because even with
And
that, you've
right.
experienced firsthand, as have I, in civil matters, not criminal like you were being exposed to, but false accusations that
Mhm.
even with all these protections, they can take it pretty far.
Right. Right. Yep. And they will, and there is corruption, there will be. That's not something that's going to just go away. I mean, they're not going to just get rid of all the deep state and every corrupt judge is going to be kicked out. And there's so much utopian fantasy that's being presented on the right, like everything's going to be perfect, and it's never going to be that way. I mean, we're never
Yeah.
going to get rid of corruption. There's always going to be greed. There's always going to be that, and we have in all, through our multi-layered appellate system, we have it's not a great system, and you've seen a lot of that judicial kind of tyranny and corruption yourself, and there is a lot of that. There it happens. That's not necessarily like a one-off thing that you're experiencing there in New York. I've seen similar stories elsewhere, but there is an appellate process that's at least designed to compensate for that and provide a remedy for that.
I hope it works. I'm actually, I've got a couple things on appeal in the Second Circuit right now. Unfortunately, not my case that was adjudicated, and I use that word generously, by
Mhm.
this rogue villain, Valerie Caproni, who is very tightly connected to all of this stuff, in my opinion, based on evidence I've seen in the public domain, very connected to everything that we're talking about. So you've specifically identified this meeting or this communication between John Podesta, Mike Morrell, and Mike Flynn, right? We're going to get
Mhm.
into detail on that during the sponsor exclusive segment, which is going to come up right after this. And for people
Right.
who are not yet subscribed to you on Substack, they can go to biggertruthmedia.com and sign up there. They're going to get the sponsor exclusive video. People should also follow Scott on X at biggertruth. And you can follow me on X at JG_CSTT. Subscribers on X are going to get the sponsor exclusive content. People who subscribe on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com will also get that. Give us a little bit of insight, Scott, into what we're going to get into with that.
Yeah, I posted on X last week. I found a Podesta uh, email from in back in 2017. I think there was a big drop of emails. Actually, I think it was 2016 to WikiLeaks from John Podesta. And John Podesta, of course, was one of the top people within the Hillary Clinton inner circle. And one of those emails was about arranging a meeting, an in-person meeting in July of 2015 between that included General Flynn, Mike Morrell, and John Podesta, and a couple others. So it was a small group. It was going to be 4 or 5 people. Now we don't have like actual documentation that this meeting actually happened, but they were planning it, and it sounded in the email like this was definitely something that all the parties were planning on doing. And so and also there's no denial that the meeting actually happened that I've seen. So um, it did happen in person. It probably wasn't something that they kept minutes and that could be FOIA'd.
Right.
But the fact that that meeting happened just a few months before Flynn went to Moscow for this RT Gala meeting, which was really, and this is part of the argument that I want to make in our sponsor segment, is that that trip to Moscow was in my opinion the true predicate for the Russia investigation against Trump.
When you say
And
predicate, though, I think you're using it differently than the FBI does. You mean that was the flashpoint? That was what set it off.
that's
They
what
planted that.
mhm. Their official narrative, that the predicate and what they published as the predicate
Yeah, the
was
legal
what
predicate.
right, what they're saying is that it was Mifsud propositioning
Right,
Papadopoulos,
right.
pay me 10 grand or whatever it is for the Hillary Clinton emails from the Russian
All right,
hackers.
so let me slow you down again because I agree with everything you're saying, but you know so much about this and it's flowing like a fire hose right now. So
Yeah, sorry.
the legal predicate that the FBI needs to present when James Comey goes to talk to Congress and all that, and they say, what was your predicate for opening this investigation? James Comey says, oh, this strange Maltese guy hanging out in London or something calls up, and no offense if George Papadopoulos ever sees this, but he's essentially a dope. He's like a young guy with no experience, knows nothing, and he's just like, ooh, having drinks and meeting hot blondes as he works for Trump's campaign for God knows why. But they call him up and say, come meet with this guy Mifsud. Mifsud tells him something or other, and because he's in England, the British MI6 or GCHQ can say, ooh, we intercepted this communication, right, and because he's American and we're British, we can spy on him, and he's in England meeting with this guy who we suspect of being some Russian something or other, and we tell the FBI. And the FBI says, oh, this is a predicate to start investigating. But what you're alleging right now, and I agree with this, is that a plan was hatched whereby John Podesta said, hey, Flynn, go to this RT dinner in Russia, sit next to Putin, and we'll take a picture of you with Putin. So, right? Is this sort of right?
That's, yeah. And not only that, but then after that dinner, then he would behave in extremely weird ways with the press that would incite further
suspicion
questions,
around
suspicion around the, and specifically that he was there on Trump's behalf,
right?
And that they were planting the seeds deliberately for what they're saying in this whole brouhaha this last weekend over these Durham annex. The bottom line message of that is that this was Hillary Clinton putting forward this idea and framing Trump as a Russian asset. But the fuel, the seeds, the fodder that they had for that was Flynn in Moscow at this, being paid by the Russian government to have dinner with next to Putin at a big event, and the suspicion that he was there on Trump's behalf. And Flynn created that. He helped to manufacture that.
So this is all a very kind of lawfare, social engineering. This is the same kind of thing that George Webb and his affiliates tried to do to me. They get somebody close to the target. That somebody goes off and does something. And then they say, oh, look at what the target did. This is his person. And he did all this crazy stuff. So Flynn knows he's going to say, oh, I'm no longer friends with Obama. I'm going to spill the beans on Obama. Let me go work with Trump. Meanwhile, he's actually a double agent trying to double cross Trump. He goes to Russia, loosely interacts with Putin just by sitting there at a dinner next to him. Putin is drawn to this dinner because at that time he thinks the United States and Russia are sort of normalizing relations. We know that Putin wants trade and normalized relations with the United States, and towards that end we've got this media entity RT that's existing in the United States to present the Russian point of view. Nothing wrong with that in a legitimate United States. We want everybody to have the First Amendment, and just like BBC can have BBC America and have their studio on Fifth Avenue over there, Russia should be able to do that too if we're going to have open trade with them. So Putin wants that. He goes to the dinner to meet with this guy. Then he starts doing all this crazy stuff. This is absolutely total lawfare, total social engineering practice. And, you know, the other piece I just wanted to ask you about, Scott, because this occurs to me, that it is very probably a legitimate, like John Podesta did not want his emails leaking to WikiLeaks. He seems to have lost his phone. Somebody got it. He had very bad operational security. And so all of his legitimate emails got leaked to WikiLeaks, and they're thinking, holy crap, we have a huge problem. We need to create a lot of confusion around the veracity of any kind of leaked emails because of John Podesta. And it's possible maybe that this story about him losing the phone is false. Maybe they got all these John Podesta emails because if you have a Hillary Clinton email server with no security on it and you find a thread to John Podesta, who knows what you could find by maybe John Podesta's password is in that Hillary Clinton email server somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And the thing is that there's no doubt that Russia was actively engaged in producing not just misinformation but disinformation, false information, and promoting that within the United States. There's no doubt that they were doing that.
Well,
Did
all
it
governments
benefit?
do that against
Yeah.
other, don't they?
Right. Yeah. And I think Russia and China in particular, but Russia was absolutely doing that very aggressively in 2016. Did it help Trump more than Hillary Clinton? I don't think so. I mean, and we won't ever know. And
Well, let me pause you here because we're going to make our way over to the sponsor exclusive segment now. We'll continue talking about that Russian disinformation, Chinese disinformation. I'm sure if you went to China and saw Iron Man, they'd say it's American disinformation. It's all got to do with just, the truth from any particular point of view, right? Anyway, we'll be back in just a few minutes. People are going to be able to join us. Stay with us, everybody. BiggerTruthMedia.com, CrowdSourceTheTruth.substack.com, SubscribeStar.com, Patreon.com/CrowdSourceTheTruth. We're going to continue talking about this. Stay with us.